Good evening. Welcome to the October meeting of the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners. As is our practice, I'd like to pledge allegiance to our flag. Please feel free to join me if you wish. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And all the commissioners are present. Our first order of business this evening is approval of the minutes of September 9.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. We have the pleasure of informational reports and presentations tonight, starting first with our woman in charge of all funds and monies, and I assume Mr. Gailey, either you or Teresa is going to be taking the lead here.
Well, I'll just quickly introduce it, and I'll then kick it over to Teresa. Just wanted to get back into the mode of providing quarterly reports, financial reports for the commissioners. We haven't done that since probably COVID time, and just wanted to get that back on the agenda for your review and any questions that you may have. So at this time, this will be the first quarter, and we will continue this practice for the preceding quarters, or upcoming quarters. I'd like to pass it over to Teresa for just a quick synopsis of what she's seeing in this quarter's report.
So the expenses we're looking right where we expected them to be. Any of them that were higher had good justifications, meaning they weren't going to continue to trend higher. They were like the software maintenance contracts that were due sooner, so they were paid earlier in the year. So again, those wouldn't be paid later in the year. So it was just when things were expected to be paid. And the revenues are looking strong right now. So it looks like everything is as anticipated, and I didn't see anything that jumped out for any concern. So, and it's a quick overview to make sure, we don't have everything in when I pull the reports, because things dribble in a little bit afterwards.
Any comments? I'll lead off and say there was a lot of detail in the reports that we received, so we're glad to shuffle our way through it as best we could. Steve?
Yeah, you got these percentage used of the budget, and pretty much they're 25 or around 25%.
Correct.
Do you run that or expect that to be a linear thing, so next time it'll be 50, or does it
Yes.
oscillate?
No.
Do you have any
Right.
predictions?
So if we're halfway through the year, it should say 50%. So, yep.
And you expect that on most accounts?
Yes. Yep. And if they're not, if they're over, the finance maintenance contract one is significantly over at this point, it's because the Munis software package is in there and the payroll package is in there, so we pay that all up front. So it's not going to continue, I think mine says 40% right now. It's not going to continue going that way because we pay those once a year. So a lot of the department ones that I looked at, when they were over 25%, it was expected things that were the one time that hit their budget expected, so.
And then a question that I have is, this pretty much lays out us for the county, but the county does have a responsibility for the cross-insurance arena. Is there any report that we're going to get like that?
We typically get reports like that, but we have somewhat sporadic meetings at this time. And so once we meet, probably in December, I can provide the first 4 months of the year to the commissioners, probably after quarter 2.
Thank you.
And Teresa, when you see in any of these interim reports either a disproportionate expenditure or lack of expenditure, is that something you usually If you don't already know the answer, try to figure out what's going on with that particular account. Is that a common thing?
Yep, we'll have the question with the department head if Alex or I don't, if it's something that we don't already know about, we'll have the conversation with them.
Okay. Good to know. Any other questions or comments?
Great having the information. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Also, an information report from our friends at the County Emergency Management Operation.
Yes, in keeping with the process that we're unfolding, and we started in September with public health. October, we have invited Michael Durkin, the Director of EMA, to come and talk a little bit about what's going on in EMA and share what they're working on and update the commissioners on a variety of things that they have their hands into. So I'll pass it over to Michael.
I do, I might need a little tech support.
Oh. Do you want to jump over to the podium, Michael? There's
Sure.
a microphone over there.
Is there someone to?
I think the air conditioning just kicked on, it's like blowing right on me.
Let's give it a jump start.
Just a little
Well-
fall chill in the air, right?
So,
I gotta,
didn't work all summer, but,
Right.
yeah.
So I can go home to no heat and I'll be comfortable
Yeah,
still.
right. Acclimation, that's what they call
you want
it.
a vest?
Oh, I do have one, thank you. I made sure to bring one because if you've been here a little while, you know it's temperature.
I never have. One of them.
This room goes from one extreme to the other. It does. We had an arbitration case in here. It was so hot that you could hardly, I mean, it was one of those 80-degree days and the air was down.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, gosh. Normally it's.
New building
Yeah.
can't come fast enough. Oh, it wasn't plugged in.
The oldest trick in the book.
That's usually my IT.
Good thing we have you, Gailey.
The real question is, who was the genius that unplugged it?
Probably me last time. Did it fall out again?
No?
Is there a green light on that?
Green light's on, there we go. Okay, would you give me 5 minutes to click through a couple? Okay. That was a lot of build-up. I hope I can now live up to that. All my trouble causing. I wanted to give a bit of a 2024 report as far as what's going on in 2024, but also kind of just since the last time I got the privilege of coming out to see you. Very brief overview of what EMA does. Essentially, our mission is to build resiliency in communities in the face of disaster. Our communities being our towns, but we define communities pretty broadly. We have 4 mission areas, and I only mention it because these are going to keep on coming up throughout the presentation. We work on preparedness, mitigation. Those are your 2 phases before a disaster strikes. We work in response during a disaster, and then we work in the recovery phase after the disaster to help rebuild and try and put things back as they once were. So, here's roughly what we look like. There's me up at the top. I have a deputy director. We have a finance person, and then we have our response coordinator, our preparedness coordinator, and then we have a mitigation recovery coordinator. So I mentioned it, and I kind of harp on it a bit because the org chart looked the same, but those titles were not there. Those specialties were not there the last time you likely saw this. And so we took existing positions due to retirements and reshuffled a little bit to specifically align our positions with our mission areas in the hopes that will build us kind of a greater pool of expertise in these different areas. What that also means is that out of the 8 people on here, since the last time we talked, 4 of them are brand new. The new being within the year. So we have a new staff as well who's really embraced the new roles. And we're already starting to see some interesting kind of cross collaborations between all those mission areas. You'll see the 2 that are lumped together is poor Ari here. He gets mitigation and recovery, so he gets 2 of them. But he gets those 2 mainly because those are probably the most linked, right? In the recovery phase is when you figure out what's broken, and that's part of Ari's job, and the other half of his job is to figure out, well, what do I do to keep it from breaking next time? So those two tend to be the most linked, which is why we see him kind of doubled up there. So I'm gonna go through our mission areas and essentially highlight some of the things we've been working on this year. In our preparedness division, for us, what preparedness means is a lot of planning work, but it's primarily training and exercise. You can see on the left side, we've got various ICS trainings we've done. Those ICS 3 and 400, those are kind of mid-level trainings in how to manage a large, complex disaster, a large, complicated emergency. So that's not something kind of your average firefighter might have, but the lieutenant would have that. The person running the incident would likely have that. And that's kind of the baseline that we operate out of, is that higher level coordination. So we host some of those. The G402 is specifically an emergency management for elected officials class. So we put on 1 or 2 of those a year, give or take. And then Basic Academy, it doesn't show up super well, but that's a shade grayer. We haven't put that on yet. That's slated to be in December and a little bit in January as well. FEMA Basic Academy is something we brought up for the first time in Maine about a year or 2 ago, and we're bringing it back up. And that's a very broad level, very general setup, everything from, essentially it goes over those 4 different mission areas. It's the very basic nuts and bolts of what is emergency management. So it's a phenomenal baseline for people to have. It takes about 3 weeks. They're not 3 consecutive weeks, but it's a sizable commitment. So we had a very successful run of it the first time, and NEMA was interested in bringing it back, and we said, yeah, we'll happily host it again. So we're excited about that. As you can see, this year we've leaned far more into exercises than trainings. They tend to flip-flop a little bit. Sometimes we'll have years that are really heavy on trainings, and sometimes we'll have years like this one where a lot of exercises, if you do an exercise every 3 years or every 5 years, eventually the stars are gonna align and you'll have a lot of exercises. So that's this particular year. Each one of these is a different exercise, and each exercise takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months to actually plan and execute. So these are sizable events. The Portland Jetport was a full-scale exercise we did last month, hosted by the Jetport that we participated in and provided a bunch of resources to support, but we also are a player in that exercise, which is an important distinction. So we provide support planning their exercise, we provide support running their exercise, we can advise them on what to do in their exercise. When the time for the exercise comes, we actually enter the exercise and play as the county as well. So we're training them to see us as part of that response as well, which is important because as of, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't really do that. We helped you plan your exercise, and then the day of the exercise we said, well, good luck. And it's like, well, we're an important response organization, so let's make ourselves part of the exercise. So we've been doing that as well. The National Guard exercise was probably our biggest one that you heard about. That was Operation Katahdin Shield. That was over the summer. That kind of took over 5 or 6 different sites across the county. So I'm sure if you saw any big black helicopters flying overhead, that's likely what that was. But you can see we do a lot of exercises, and we work with a variety of different partners. In response, the main service we provide in response is the operation of the county's EOC, or Emergency Operations Center. We opened our EOC 5 times thus far this year. I would expect about another one. There tends to be one kind of November, December timeframe as storms come. So it wouldn't be out of the realm for us to have 1 or 2 more in the year. You can see they've been a winter storm in January, an ice storm, a nor'easter. We activated to help the city of, or the town of Gray when they had a water main break that left half of the town without water. And we activated just recently in September to help the town of Scarborough when they had a pneumonia leak at a commercial facility. So we don't put any sort of parameters necessarily around what exactly is a disaster. If a town calls us and it's a disaster for them, then it's a disaster for us, quite simply. So we've had 5 of these activations so far. You can see our trend, if you look at it year over year, activating the EOC and actually doing that level of response and providing that service is not a brand new thing, but it hasn't historically been done to the degree and the amount we're doing it. And part of that is we're finding there's a greater need for it. We're seeing more storms and bigger storms that are coming, and sometimes they're coming right off the tail of each other, and we get 2 in a row. But we're also seeing the more we activate, the more we do stuff, the more the towns are actually requesting help from us because they're used to seeing us in these disasters and the times really when they should be seeing us. The time to see emergency management is not that once every 100 years event. It's the once every couple times a year event. I think 5 to 7 times a year is about where we should be as a fairly large, busy county. So you can see we've started and really built that trend up. Then there's events outside of disasters where we have a pool of deployable assets that we can deploy out and send to. A lot of these are what we call blue sky events. They're fairs and festivals and that sort of thing, where they just need a little extra logistical support to prevent or mitigate a disaster should something bad happen at one of those events. So we see a lot of those. I even have an example. One more click. There's an example of a radio repeater system that was deployed out to the Cumberland Fair. The idea being that fairgrounds, during that time with all those extra people, needs an extra layer of secure communications. And so we can deploy communications out to provide that need. So if there is an incident, they have the proper communications to address the incident. I don't fully understand it, but I'm told that if you like radios, that's a really exciting picture. So, if anyone's a radio fan, that might mean a lot more to you than it does to me. Next one. So, mitigation is kind of I won't call it a newer area for us. We've always maintained the county's mitigation plan, but for a long time the mitigation plan is what the county does as far as mitigation goes. And there's a lot more to mitigation that we could be doing. So I'll touch on 2 things this time. One is called the THIRA, and then I want to talk a little bit about some grant funding and some different funding streams. So the THIRA, or Threat and Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment, it's a formal planning process that we go through every 5 years in my office, and it determines what's the biggest hazard and risk that the county has. It's pretty straightforward. The last THIRA was done in 2019. We had 3 towns participate. Not a great source of data for us. We didn't get the huge good results we wanted. And we also found that when all the local EMA directors are fire chiefs and we poll the local EMA directors, what's the biggest hazard? It tends to be fires. Which is surprising, because I didn't think wildfires were one of our biggest hazards in Maine, and they're not. But we have a THIRA that actually ranks that, I think, unfairly highly, because that's the audience we asked. So we just completed our current THIRA, our 2024. We're still in the process of drafting it, but we had over 20 towns participate this time, and we had EMA directors, we had police chiefs, we had fire chiefs, we had town managers, we had IT guys, we had public works folks. We cast a much, much wider net. So our current THIRA, or current in about a month when we finish really drafting it, will be a much better representation of what the hazards and risks in the county are. If anyone's curious, the top 5 or top 7 I put up there, not super shocking. Our top 3 are all different varieties of winter storms, because it's Maine, that's kind of our bread and butter. So not a big surprise there. And then flash flooding, coastal flooding, summer windstorms, not including hurricanes, which was a separate category. And then rounding it out is kind of terrorism, mass violence. We overall rank about 28 separate categories, everything from cybersecurity down to harmful algal blooms in lakes. So all sorts of different hazards. Anything that has been a hazard in the county is on that list. And we poll essentially a large network of people and use this document for, this document will guide the decision making of our office for the next 5 years, essentially. If we're trying to figure out what is the next deployable asset that we need to get and that we would need to potentially purchase to support folks, we're going to be thinking, well, what do we need in winter storms? Because that's the direction it points us in, which I think is a fairly honest direction. Then there's another big important piece of mitigation is actually bringing the funding in, and that was one thing you all had mentioned during our kind of county goal setting was how do we bring in the resources to do all these things? So we know there's a lot of mitigation funding out there and available, but it's something that hasn't really been pursued, and we can kind of see that right in this middle one. So the Building Resilient Infrastructure Grant, or the BRIC grant, we can see historically no one in the county has been awarded that. And that's not something we as the county apply for, that's something the towns would apply for. However, each year with that grant, there's money left on the table. And this is the money that can build a bigger culvert that doesn't flood every single time, or be a backup generator at a high school, or it could be all sorts of different things. So this is the funding, and it can be big pots of funding sometimes. There's currently 10 or 11 different pots of mitigation funding available in the state. It's just getting the applications in for them. And they are not easy applications for towns to do. So I'm not surprised that historically none of this money has gone to our county, or very minimal of it. So what we did in 2023 is we started actively promoting them and really harping on our local EMA directors and saying, we know you've got that road that floods every time it rains. We know you've got these things. Who do we need to talk to help get some applications in? We went to the initial meetings between the towns and MEMA to just be a translator and translate, this is what FEMA means when they say that, because it can seem like a different language sometimes. And through that level of support, we managed to actually shake up 4 different applications through 4 different towns, or actually 3 different towns. One town got 2, resulting in about $229,000 of committed funds to help fix problems before the next storm hits, before they become bigger problems down the road. I mention that because Ari, that poor guy I picked out of the lineup there, that's a big part of what he does. His background is in doing these mitigation funds at a state level. So now we have a really excellent resource and expertise to bring in. Currently, since hiring him just 4 or 5 months ago, give or take, he's held consultations with 11 different partners, typically towns, but it could be a school district, it could be a water district or something like that. And he's currently supporting 4 of them in gathering all the information they will need to apply. We're not doing application support yet because we're still waiting for that application to come out. It should be out any day now, but we'll be closely following his efforts and his work to support the towns to get the funding they need to prevent some of these damages from happening. So that's a new and really growing area of mitigation for us. It's far more than just maintaining a mitigation plan. Yeah. So recovery, it's been too long before I put up some photos. I wanted to give a brief kind of state of where we're at as far as the recovery goes from 2 recent events. So we in Cumberland County currently have 2 open presidential disaster declarations. The first being the kind of back-to-back storms that hit in January. There was the one on the 10th and then the 13th right after each other. So since those storms, we've had countless, I'll say, probably 3 or 4 dozen different FEMA staff on site in the county. I'm sure you've probably heard from some of them performing a lot of different roles, including going door to door in affected communities. So we've had an interesting, big, robust response to that. What that's resulted in about $2.4 million in IA, and what that is that's individual assistance. That's money from FEMA to affected families, to affected homeowners. If your property was affected, that's direct funding to that. So that went in our county to about 471 different families. Sounds like a lot of money. If you break it down, it's about $5,000 on average. So it's not a huge amount of money. But for those families and for those people impacted, it can make a really big difference. At the same time, not a typo, we had about $2.4 million also in PA to the municipalities. PA is the public assistance, so that's FEMA reimbursing the towns for the costs and the damages of the disaster. That could be overtime for firefighters, that could be that culvert that washed out, that could be a lot of different things. So from that disaster, there's about $2.4 million committed to our towns, which is it's a pretty sizable number for an event like that. That 2.4 million in IA, that number is not going to change. The 2.4 for PA, that could still wobble a little bit, depending on what the towns do and how it finally shakes out. So that number could shift a little bit. Then in April, we had another storm where so far we've assessed about $1.4 million in damages for those public assistance. Same thing, that's money going to the towns. That number will very likely go up. That number is a lot less steady. 1.4 million is the base number that we as a county need to be included in that presidential declaration. So in order to play the game, we have to have $1.4 million in damages. And as soon as they hit that, FEMA stops counting. So we have at least 1.4 million, but I'm sure that number is in reality much higher. That was a very interesting storm for us because that 1.4 million isn't washed out culverts, it's all debris. That was that ice storm where the power was out for 3, 4, 5 days and every road was blocked. And we've had towns that are still 6, 7, 9 months later, they're still digging out from that and they're still clearing debris and stuff. So that's $1.4 million, almost entirely in debris removal, which is very, very big. That's huge. That was also a very important event for us as an agency because we got almost every town in the county, except I think 4 of them, to contribute and go through the effort of collecting their damages and putting dollar amounts to this and reporting that into us, which is very big because that's a fairly big onerous task for the towns to take on when there's no guarantee they'll actually get any money at the end of it. So the fact that we got that level of participation in the recovery function and that we have 2 active recoveries currently, I think, I want to say it bodes well for the future of recovery, but it's a task that we as an agency are expecting we will have to do more and more and more. That IA was the first time in 16 years that the state of Maine had done the IA process and had opened up that stream of funding from FEMA. So the fact that we were able to pivot very quickly and help support that effort and secure that amount of funding, I consider a pretty sizable victory. And those are largely our 4 kind of mission areas. I've focused a fair bit, well, unless people want to look at the pictures more. I've focused a fair amount on kind of what's the new stuff we're doing, what's new from last year and where we're at, but I'll happily answer any question.
Any questions, comments? Steve?
I got a comment for you, Mike. By the way, thank you. This is a very good presentation. There may be other groups that need to hear that. I was at a meeting with a number of firemen, and one of the things they talked about was hazmat and an electric car whose battery blew up. And they didn't have any way of handling that, nor did they know really how to handle it. The state was not very helpful. They did what they could. And then to dispose of the material, et cetera. So that may be some area that for your group to gather the firemen together and say, okay, how do we put this together so we've got a hazmat response? Because it's going to happen again with all the electric vehicles that are beginning.
Yeah, I think for sure it's a cutting edge trend. I mean, those cyber trucks stick out, so I feel like I see them all the time now, and I never used to. And we're seeing across the country. I haven't found an agency that really has it dialed in and has figured out exactly what's the really easy way to make these calls, I won't say easy, but routine. But it's something we're expecting to see more and more. When we encounter kind of sticky, wicked problems like that, one thing we try to do is we'll incorporate that into an exercise. Because we find that our exercises are sometimes the best place where everybody's actually around the table having these conversations. So we find if we can include 1 or 2 of those little wicked problems in there, it kind of sparks a bit of a conversation and gets folks thinking. As far as a thing we could do right away, at least, would be that. Yeah. Please.
Thank you for the highlights. It's really fascinating. It's also just a great reminder of what can be done with a department. And I guess I have just 2 questions. One around, because you have some new folks, was it hard to hire in your department? Or did you feel like you have lag time between finding replacements? Or do you feel like people are really excited to get into this area?
I found administratively on the Amy side, no lags, no hiccups at all in that sort of realm. There's not a wide base of people with emergency management experience.
Yeah.
So we're typically looking at taking someone who has military experience, first responder, something adjacent, and kind of transitioning them over. And that's not uncommon at all. Out of those 4 new staff, and I'll say 5 if I go back maybe about a year and a half, 3 of them are from out of state.
Yeah.
And we had one who moved from Virginia, one from Massachusetts, and one from Wisconsin.
Yeah. Great.
In my discussions with other county EMA directors, they say, how the heck are you getting someone? We can't get anyone to come from New Hampshire, let alone Virginia.
Yeah.
So we are having to pull from a wider net to get people.
Great. Yeah, it seems like the hires are going well, and it's nice to hear about, increasing the funding and getting out there and being an advocate for the BRIC grants and the ability to find that funding. I think that's a critical piece of not hiding behind the screen, but being out in the communities and saying, here's this money available.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that part of the program that you shared tonight.
Oh yeah, and what we've found is since that was pretty much my exact instruction to Ari was, get out there
Yeah,
and meet
right.
people, because we don't even know the landscape of mitigation. And he's talked to soil and water conservation groups. I mean, he's met and talked with people that historically my office has had no interactions with. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, great. Keep up the good work.
Anybody else? It was a very nice presentation. I
Thank you very much.
actually quite, I didn't know a lot about that. I had a different concept of what you guys were doing, and I'm glad to know about it.
And you're welcome anytime to come around the bunker and meet everybody, and we'll happily tell you, they'll tell you in great detail what they do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks.
Okay, so, the general public is here and is welcome to comment for 3 minutes on any topic of interest to them. But seeing none, for the 38th month in a row, we now proceed to the consent agenda. Can I, if we look at 24, 94, and 95, can I have a motion to pass that agenda?
Chairman, I'd like to take 95 off the agenda.
Any objection? So can we have a motion on 94, please?
So move for 94.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Thomas. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. 2495, amend the parking fee.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to bring this up is, to me, the parking garage should be a function of the county that pays for itself. And that means that the fee should cover everything that needs to take place with it, the capital work, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know that we're looking at it in that direction. And I don't know what the position is of the other commissioners either. But I just think that we've got entities within the county that can be supported by fees rather than taxes. We ought to be looking at that.
Anybody here remember what the monthly charge is for someone to park there if there was a spot available?
The 160?
160.
Yeah.
160.
Right.
And now it's 180.
Yeah, that doesn't strike me as below the market very far.
The market, and I included the area garages near us, they are in the 185 to 195 range. The large parking lot called top of the Old Port over here is at 156, but that's surface parking, not a garage parking. We're proposing 160 a month. Actually, I'm sorry, 180 a month. And going up 75 cents on the hourly rate. In addition, we'd be going up $25 on seasonal. We'd be going up $15 on lost card and up $5 on activation of a card. The rule of thumb that we have taken over the years is that we don't want to be the highest, but we don't want to be the lowest. There's a sweet spot for Cumberland County to be in, and we feel as though that 180 being $10, $15 less than the private garages is a good spot for us. We do cover our costs. We bring in over $800,000 worth of revenue a year. One thing that we are seeing of late now is some capital improvements that we have to do. We're still going through our first phase of capital improvements and Bill, Alex and I have recently had a discussion how we are going to fund subsequent phases of that public capital out in that garage. It's one of those things that we, at some point, need to kind of draw the line in this revenue line and say that the revenue's just not gonna shed off to the operations. The revenue's gonna be earmarked to capital. And that's what our intents are. We need to work through that in the coming months on how that, and what that looks like. We have millions of dollars of work in that garage, and we've only scratched the surface this summer. No pun intended. There's a lot going in, but we do cover costs out there. We have only one staff person working in that garage on a day-to-day basis. And utilities are covered through that revenue. But the rest of it's shed off to operations, and we just need to realize that any new increases and any new revenue that we experience within that garage is allocated towards our capital needs in that garage for the foreseeable future.
Jim, when you say shut off to operations, are you saying that there has been cash flow available from the garage to cover other department costs in other parts of the county budget?
I would say yes, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it all goes into the general fund,
Right, so
so,
it's not,
Nothing specific.
and the police department, the Portland Police Department used to have some parking spaces there. They still do, right?
They do.
And we have some county employees that are in there as well.
We have county employees, we have state employees, we have a fair number of monthlies that are abutting businesses in the area. We have the federal government, various buildings in that building. So there's a number of tenants that we have.
You know, the city of Portland at one point sold a couple of their garages. 6 months later, their wailing and moaning of regret was heard across the city because it just was an uneconomic thing to do. Once you built them, you wanna hang on.
One of the opportunities that we have coming up, and once we move upwards of 40 to 50 employees over to the new building, that's gonna be 40 or 50 new parking spaces that are gonna be available here for either daily or monthly rates.
Commissioner Watonis,
Yeah.
you have something?
He answered my question, he must have been picking my brain. So would you think that you have a problem in, with those other spaces? Because would they go by the monthly rate, or would you go by with the daily rate on those?
I think we will, we're still talking about how that will divvy up, but I think we would slide some into the monthly, but a large majority of them would be daily. Because having those cars, those spaces being sold 2-3 times a day over a 30-day period is better than parking
Right.
one car in for $180 for a month. We're leaning towards the daily.
The other question I have is, were promoted with this garage on with the nights of the civic center stuff going on, like the hockey games or concerts or anything like
Not
that?
to my knowledge, no.
Would that be something that we would, consider, or is it just we're too far away?
I've never gone that route because I've always felt as though it was too far away. I feel as though the Temple Street garage kind of is a catch-all for a lot of the arena parking that is just outside of all the parking around the arena. And going another 2 or 3 blocks to our garage might be just too far out of the way.
It's easier to get out, though,
Very true.
than just, than to be up there for 45 more minutes, that extra 5 minutes, like with a walk and stuff.
The hockey season is during cold weather months, and
Spring Street Garage is favored by me.
Not if you're on the top and you're there for 45 minutes.
Yeah, well, you got the heater on, so you're doing better. Patty, did you have
Yeah, I
something?
just had just a comment about, it's a philosophy that we're not the cheapest, we're not the most expensive, we're somewhere in the middle there or above average. And I just, that's a philosophy, and that, I appreciate that and can understand why you wanna do that. My question was also answered about the actual tenancy, how many different people of what types use the parking garage? Because I think it should be accessible, affordable, yet I think in today's day, if those prices seem really low, I would have liked to seen higher increases, but I also don't want to, penalize folks that we know are long-term tenants there. So, as those spots open up as we move to Northport, I guess my question is, can we take that opportunity when we lose those, would you say 25 spaces or 40? I missed it.
40 to
Probably
50?
upwards of 40.
40. Take those 40, and I'm wondering if, now that people can finally get in, it's a different kind of rate that would start the wheel turning for new rates down the road. so that like folks would not be penalized who are currently there and doing their thing. We support their business, I mean, we appreciate their business, but new folks coming in might have to pay a little bit more, and I agree, the daily rate seems like financially would be maybe the best way to go. But that might be an opening for us, because I don't know when we're gonna get into Northport, it could be, who knows when, but to me, it just feels like an opportunity. And if we can, $10 here or there, it all adds up over a year, it feels like it might be the way to go, where it balances the trick of your philosophy, yet the new folks coming in are just gonna pay a little higher, if it's possible, I don't know.
One of the things that we are doing more often is bringing this before the commissioners for an increase. When I first started here, it was something that we talked about maybe the third, fourth year I was here. I think we're averaging every other year at this time to keep on itching that,
Okay.
that rate up. So we're trying to not impact too much all in one year, but come before you more regularly.
Right.
And just a comment, Jim, I would say, during the work week, my experience has been, that garage is full.
Yeah,
I mean, so we don't have an issue with,
right,
with
I
filling
wouldn't
it.
think so, not importantly, yeah, that's what I mean, I feel like it's a
I don't know about
captive
the weekend,
audience,
but-
and it's, I know ripping went off, but, yeah, okay.
Well, my issue is that anything that we can move off the tax rolls onto a fee-based is where it should go. I don't know if it's too much trouble, but is there any problem in getting a P&L statement on the thing?
We'll have to take a look at it.
Okay.
I'm hesitating a little bit because we're right in the middle of budgets too.
Oh,
so
no,
we
no,
got-
I don't mean
We
right
got
now.
things
I
coming
mean
from
just-
all over.
Yeah.
If we get the budget out the door, to you in November, maybe we can
Just start in the beginning of the year or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the comment that it's already basically cross-subsidized other activities for a while, and now probably has needs that suggests that we're not gonna see a reduction in operating expense because of any change in the rate. That money is probably gonna be directed at making sure the place doesn't fall down.
Right, the maintenance is a concern.
We have a lot of concrete work,
Right.
a lot of drainage work, a lot of
Yeah.
repainting metal girders, stairwells, there's a lot of work. Elevators,
Yeah, like, yeah,
nonstop.
All right,
Thank you.
all right.
so, did we already pass that?
No.
No, you haven't.
Can I have a motion then on 2485?
Motion to pass.
95, I mean.
Second.
Motion and seconded, motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Gordon. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it's unanimous. Well, I'm gonna ask Commissioner Gordon, as our vice chair, to take the lead on 2496. The successful bidder is the apparent successful bidder, according to the agenda I'm reading, is one of my clients, and I haven't read any of the materials and do not intend to, and I will not be voting.
So can I have a motion to approve this award?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion.
If I could just intercede, I think the board needs to take a vote on dismissing the chairman from the vote, just for the record, because of his conflict of interest.
I move that we dismiss Chair Cloutier because he's very dismissive. No, from the
Second.
vote because of
Highly
his,
deserving.
because of his business conflict of interest.
I'll second.
Now,
All
need to
Those in
those,
vote.
favor?
all those in favor?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on this order. Discussion.
If I could I ask the facilities director, Bill Trufant, to come up and introduce what this project is?
Good evening, how are ya?
We're good, and
How
you?
are you?
Not bad, not bad. So, I'm assuming this is for the air handler project and the controls for the courthouse. This was a definite tricky one to get off the ground. We had to take into consideration the leaseholders of the state of Maine into consideration when we did this. We had to take into consideration of what our needs were, and wrap this into one project. We had, I think 12 people out of 2 pre-bid meetings show up for this, when only 3 general contractors actually bid on the project, which was a little disappointing, to be honest with you, with the actual traffic we had for the project. The bid tabulations were actually less than what was estimated for the project, which we were very pleasantly surprised. And we're starting to see those numbers come down post-COVID with some of the materials that were no longer available. So that's definitely a good sign for future projects. It was awarded to Doton's. Prior to awarding, we asked them for a schedule, because we have to work that into the county moving out of their spaces, the state and their trials that they already have in place, because they schedule months, if not sometimes 9 months ahead of time. They want to start in February. So getting that information ahead of time allows them to figure out where they're going to put their cases in the meantime, or the trials that they need to operate. They showed a very aggressive schedule of being done by the 3rd week of September of next year. So that's a super aggressive timeline. I believe by what they have shown, they should have no problem doing that. They actually want to start as soon as mid-December for field verifications and measurements, so they can get the submittals going and getting the long lead items ordered. It's going to impact this entire building. It's going to create noise. It's going to create a facade change. Actually, on opposite the exit lane of the garage, there's actually matching stonework that's going to encase the ductwork that goes up the side of the building, and the actual air handler is going to be on the roof. There's going to be a period of the air handler being shut down, where there's absolutely no air circulation in certain areas of the building. So we have to schedule that with people working here. We're going to try to schedule it with an admin shutdown week for the state side. So it's a lot of moving pieces that we need to coordinate with these contractors that have been on that project, and we feel that Doton's represent the best schedule, timeline, and reasonable price to do this entire project. I'm very excited for this. The state is extremely excited. They may not be excited for the disturbance that's going to happen, but they are super excited with the end project, because the current system that we have, we probably get 10 to 12 calls a day that an individual courtroom may be too warm or too cold, and there's nothing we can do. We try our best to try to adjust the system that we currently have, but that compressed air system we have that monitors and adjusts the thermostats in these individual rooms, just it's gone past its usable life. So this is a perfect opportunity to bring this building up to today's standards, and it will be today's standards. It measures everything from heat and cool in a room for the amount of room, so it will automatically modulate. It's put it this way, it's not a Cadillac, but it will do whatever we need to do, so that way we're not, maintenance-wise, having to monitor it more, and we can focus on fixing other things, which for me is super great for my guys, because we have a long list of stuff that we need to fix. But we are very excited to get this project off the ground.
Questions of Bill? You sold the job.
Well, we've lived in this room for the last year or two, either freezing or too hot, so.
So perfect example. I mean, I think I heard Teresa say that she's super cold, and I think I heard that it hasn't run all summer. That's what I'm running into, and this is what we need. So.
Bill, I have a question.
Sure.
Since it's HVAC,
Yep.
is there any heat pumps involved in this, or we're not going down that road?
So there isn't any heat pumps per se in this. What we are doing is adding on to the existing boiler system by putting all the internal courtrooms right now do not have hot water VAV, so we cannot temper the air at all. It's either all cold or nothing, and it's just air exchange. So now we're able to temper the air off the existing boilers. The system that we have currently it would, we can't tie it into the existing cooling tower that we have, which I would love to, but we just can't. There are certain parts of the county side of the building that we have the opportunity to do in the future, and I think using that for that, the heat pump style for that needs to stay over there. Incorporating on this side would be a massive infrastructure change that it would take a lot longer and a lot more money.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Do I now have to have an order to turn it back to the chair?
No, I don't think so.
Jim, yours.
Gee, thanks. Next item is 24097, opera award for a bid for the 27 Northport office building. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Someone?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Looks pretty routine. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. New business, we have a proclamation for Domestic Violence Action Month for the month of October, 24-91. Can somebody read this proclamation for us, for the record?
I wish I could.
For the benefit of both of the people that are gonna watch this. Patty, will you do us a favor?
Domestic Violence Action Month Proclamation 2024. Whereas domestic violence remains a pervasive issue across Cumberland County, the United States, and the world, with implications for personal and community health. Whereas domestic violence affects people of all genders, sexual orientation, ages, racial and ethnic, cultural, social, religious, and economic groups in the United States and here in Cumberland County. Whereas in 2023, 15,147 people received help from the Maine Coalition to End Domestic Violence Resource Centers, and 50% had at least one in the home. Whereas in 2023, through these doors, Cumberland County's Domestic Violence Resource Center served 2,958 unduplicated individuals, receiving 8,102 helpline calls, and provided 5,480 bed nights at shelter. Whereas there were domestic violence-related homicides in Maine in 2023. Whereas women who were murdered in the United States by a current or former partner or family member. Whereas research shows that a protective factor in preventing domestic violence is creating a community where people are connected, supported, and cared for by each other. Whereas every day in Cumberland County, individuals and organizations support people impacted by domestic violence by providing therapeutic, educational, housing, advocacy, and medical services. Whereas all of us have a vital role in preventing day and domestic violence. Now, or be resolved that the Cumberland County Commissioners hereby proclaim October 24 as Domestic Violence Action Month in Cumberland.
Thank you. I have a motion to pass the motion. Discussion. I would make the comment that for more than 4 decades practicing law in Cumberland County, I'm very glad to see that our current district attorney is following multiple office holders to bubble into and more and more successful in doing that. And I guess I would also encourage people to try to understand that it's worthwhile to pick up the phone if the circumstances. So I'm glad to support this, and I the progress achieved, which actually substantial continues, and so others.
Election Partnership Coordinator here at the county, and does a wonderful convening groups on a monthly basis to keep domestic efforts and always striving to create a better community. Maybe one day domestic violence not population. It just gives you an opportunity if she like thing for these that are going this month. Just came from and would you like to
so for continuing for domestic action, count good to partner a lot of including our court here enough so that the whole month and you say court reach out side review here in all the so that people know who's by abuse out because mine not just who are using abuse for that. If you someone or someone in an abusive situation, you can call and get some information on the person out to the as you know, statistics year and last year, found 50% of sides, and who's murder, lots of tells us who higher. Cumberland County, our and partners work with the tools that we have available to identify these higher is. Collab criminal legal systems partner with high-risk response teams and the response for the electronic all have very supportive and helpful. I appreciate commissioner support to continue that program and also through the that we have here at the county through the Office of Violence Against Women. And I especially appreciate the fund you had allocated ARPA for a survivor safety net fund. Phil, our fiscal 21 group had allocated that survivor emergency fund we utilize very quickly. And as you know, were compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic, but they still can. I did just meet with some of the advocates from through some local affairs. The advocates to pass along that the funding has had the greatest impact of any of the funding that they've had because they've actually been able to meet the individualized needs of people and their families at a level that they've been able to in the past, and that alone has had the greatest survivor and individual safety, people and their families and their children. So I just for your support, and there are Domestic Action Month on good social through these some tips as well. But third, this week the national movement to help raise awareness of domestic abuse. So wear purple and be really just give you a ribbon pin. No need more, but you're welcome to do more like post it on media. And I'm answer
Any questions?
Just a quick comment. Jen, thank you for all your efforts. Well, domestic violence is a scourge on society, Cumberland County, our small towns and our cities. But your efforts and the efforts have made a difference. Appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you. Partnership.
Thank you. Thanks, and also, I guess, ask you a question of, how things, obviously it is a community group, all of us are part of this. See daylight at the end of the tunnel or some here, within Cumberland County, some progress, in the proclamation, it's always tough to read. It's hard, but I'm glad they're out there because if they're not, if no one's gonna, so always pleased to read the proclamation, support it. Question would be lives on a side, how many people, get their feet. I think things for that, maybe not in the future, care about turning a positive way.
I don't have the actual numbers of how many lives, I think that we just, and tell that, the response I before and some of the actions that people have, the electronic individuals have said that those helps lives. So we wouldn't know for sure if they were going to become one of those homicide statistics. But the individuals that have been said that these actions have helped to save their lives. And I do, with some of that ARPA funding, that we've helped circumvent some of the homicides that could potentially have happened because people felt particularly the hardships that during isolation of the COVID pandemic, that the have helped people's ability to find locations to stay safely with their children. So, that the work here has helped to save some lives. I remember, in conjunction with the support you've given team that we do intervention, but it's been around for over 20 years. The court response, domestic and holding offensive community is to the other way, and when people language behavior which I think is a lot of the efforts we've been doing.
Thank you, Jen.
We have a motion, we already have the motion. Discussion? Seeing none, favor say aye.
Aye.
98, the authorization for criminal justice response grant. Mr. Gabriel, speaking on this.
I am going to introduce it and then invite Jen up. Because this 1,000 violence against women. All her work, she did a fantastic job of writing this, getting, and we're excited when it came on the left. Were awarded this money. So, Jen, come up and present.
So initially, I had come before you to ask if we could apply for the $500,000, and then working with our community, we just for the $700,000, and that was a commitment that we were going to put additional focus on sexual assault services, intimate partner violence, acquaintance and sexual assaults. So, application, we were awarded the $700,000 for the next 3 years. It starts October 1st. However, we still have to close out our 2021 before we can money addition has not yet. We did receive the award, so we'll be start grant soon, and just looking for from you, 700 from the Office Against Women for the Improving Justice Grant. Answer any questions. I did present before about some of the details, but I'm happy to answer any more details about the questions.
Anybody have any questions? Alex?
I think specified it, not a comment. Weeks ago, you call those out the grant, the new one with a few of the granted down in Washington. And that hers was highest scoring application they'd ever seen. There's that.
Other than that, they didn't really like it, is that?
Thank you. I owe a large credit to Liz Blackwell-Moore, who helped me a lot, making sure that we dotted all of our i's and crossed our t's to put in a good grant application.
A couple of months ago, she was here and in response and made people understood. She and her team were resource people for a lot of people that probably need the help, and some of whom accepted. So we think pretty highly of her team. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So can we have a motion on this item?
So moved.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any further? None, all say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. We have,
Mr. Chairman, if I could jump in here before 24:86, late this afternoon, we received an email from Kathleen Craig Smith concerning this item. And this item is kind of part two of discussion from September when when the sheriff was before you requesting permission to submit a grant to the Maine Opioid Council for Suboxone treatment at the jail. This afternoon, after emphasis that the Grants Committee did review this, the Grants Committee does pass a favorable recommendation on this. But this afternoon, Smith, I have checked with both of our people who are knowledgeable about the use of Sublocade and the proposed program, and they cannot make it this evening to answer any questions of the commissioners may have. I spoke with the Sheriff Joyce, and while we will probably miss the deadline for submission of the grant to the Maine Recovery Center, we would like to withdraw the request for authorization at this time. So if we could move to take a vote on withdrawing this item off the agenda versus for or against.
have a motion to indefinitely table this matter,
Are we tabling it, or are we?
indefinitely. Yes,
So,
that's the same thing as getting rid of it.
well, okay, so question went to you, Jim, is why does he think whether they're not gonna meet the request? Because I thought all the information was all ready to go.
We have no further information other than what was written in this email.
Well,
It's our belief that the deadline for the grant
it's come and gone.
is coming up soon, and our next meeting is November.
But if we're gonna, pass it with tonight, I mean, with it, if we intended to pass it with tonight, which I'm assuming that we were, they would have been all ready to go submit, correct?
I don't have an answer for
To
that.
that. Is there a reason why there's nobody here from the sheriff's office?
I don't have an answer for that.
Oh, okay.
I have a question for the
Patty?
county manager. I understand what the email said, but if we were just to approve it, what would happen?
He doesn't have an answer for that either.
Mr. I mean, by approving it, I guess my question, it's not being rhetorical or, sarcastic, it's if we approve it, because we think it's the right thing to do, we've got all the information in place. I heard this evening from you that it has passed all the grant requirements for the form that we have internally. So, and if we believe in this, like this is a good program, and we want to say yes to it, that's our part as commissioners to say yes to it. Whether it gets executed down the line is someone else's job. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay.
Well, I will, somebody wants to make a motion, we can discuss it.
As I make a motion that we, as the commissioners, accept this because it's meet all the criteria, and without them here, you know, to answer some more questions, and I support with what Patty said. I mean, it's a goodwill program.
So this motion is to approve the order that would approve the
Right.
permission to go. Is there a second?
Right, I'll second.
Okay. So it's moved and seconded. I do have a couple of comments about this.
I do too.
Uh,
I go, I do, but I'll go ahead.
One of my comments was, in the last, we saw a little bit of this at our last meeting, it's missing some pieces, it sounds like it met all the criteria internally. One of the concerns was financially, how would we make sure that we could fulfill the entire, I guess, years of grant funding? Was that gonna be difficult from the county budget side? If it was gonna put us in a place that might make us vulnerable, I'd like to know that. But if we feel like the grant request and what we would have to do does not put us in a vulnerable place financially, then I'm in favor of this,
Um,
so.
I have these comments, if I could, yeah.
I know that.
I took it upon myself to wander, using my limited skills through the internet to find what was actually I think it was an article in the New York Times about, this earth-shattering undertaking by a jail in Somerset County, Maine. And that's the extent of the expert or somewhat expert information that I have, but it was enough for me to wonder whether this was a good idea in the first place. I think we were told last month, but, like I say, it was 17th hand information, as far as we all knew, that this was going to affect of a large number of inmates at the county jail, 8 or 10 inmates. So it certainly did not strike me as a panacea, when one of the advantages that was suggested for it was that it prevented people from cuffing their drugs so that they could sell them or do whatever else in the jail later. As problems go, and especially because that relates to maybe as many as 100 inmates, there is a better solution than moving to take care of the 10 who would be involved in this. So I, for one, do not have any reluctance to support a program that has a 3-year grant and no guarantee that it was going to have another one, because that's a conjectural problem and one that could be met in a variety of ways over the passage of time. I'm gonna have a little trouble supporting this just because it seems like there's a lot to wonder about in relation to this grant even now, and I had expected that tonight we would have had somebody here, whether they want to withdraw it or not, who would be available to have a informed discussion about whether this was actually a worthwhile thing to do. I still think I shouldn't have said tabled indefinitely, I should have said indefinitely postponed. But indefinitely postponed is the way you kill something that's had a motion made, and which this now has, of course. I assume if we'd known about this email more than a couple of hours ago, Catherine could have done her magic and we wouldn't have had anything on the agenda to be looking at anyway, but that's not the situation we're in. I understand the impulse to pass it anyway. I will make my last final comment. Liz Blackwell made it very clear that her team was available, and has been, to help put this together, and, that was a resource that we don't know whether it was ever accessed or not. But
I can answer that. To the best of our knowledge, that they did reach out, and Brandon from the Public Health Office has provided some help on this grant.
Okay, good to know. Steve?
Yeah, well, to get on this train, this topic first came to me through another committee, the Professional Council for Jail Standards. And the sheriff that I think you're talking about, or you got information on, Jim, is Dale Lancaster. And he really sung his praises. One of the things that really pushed me out to look at it more was that, according to the reports that he's received and got from the medical group, is that 7 out of 10 of those people that are on it and leave do not come back. The recidivism rate is lower because of that. Those with, again, 7 to 10 is the ratio. Those without it is generally somewhere between 3 and 4. So there is a savings of people that are on it, and when you think about that, a couple of people not in the jail is to me, is a win. The thing that I was going to ask them, should they have showed up, was ask them, not at this time, because I would have supported the bill, was that what would be the total cost to supply it to all they say 40%, which would, from the numbers that I took off the information we had, would be 126 people in the jail. What's the total cost to do that versus the present program, the total cost to supply the daily pill form? When I mean total, I mean the cost to actually go and get the individual, have it administered daily, and then get them back and make sure that they have in fact ingested the product. And then all the harassment, et cetera, that goes on with that. What kind of cost are we saving when we start to look at that? The other is the ancillary benefits of the program, the pill versus the injectable, and then and it gets to such things that I think you mentioned, excuse me, Commissioner, diminished harassment and the supervised time during medication. There's some other issues that have come up there. So it may not be the answer, but to me, if it isn't, we would have to look hard and long in 3 years to see whether we wanted to continue on with it or not. It would either be a success or it wouldn't be. I think that I think the program is worth going forth at this time. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just want to say, recalling from the last meeting, what really pricked my ears was that recidivism. You know, if we were really concerned about the folks who are going to be released, we want them to be successful, we want them to reenter society in a meaningful, gainful way, you know, that this potentially was a little bit of a game changer in terms of someone who is, you know, has been or isn't an addict back in society. What do we do to help these folks? And if this is a major step forward, I would always err on the side of, I think that this program seems worthy, because isn't that the goal, to bring people out and hopefully have them begin a positive life again? So that's the part that I was excited about hearing. When it first came to the table, we just didn't know enough about the financial ramifications because of that whole cliff drop-off after 3 years. Then what happens? We don't want to create a hole in our budget that we cannot commit to, and that was my stumbling block. So I see positive things from something like this. So I guess, based on tonight and knowing being here to ask them questions that would help really make a decision a lot easier, my only thought is, well, keep your eyes and ears open. Maybe this will come around again someday, and someone will be here to speak to the matter and answer questions that we might have. And personally, I hate wasting my time here with something that doesn't effectuate anything. Thank you for listening.
Well,
Go ahead.
Commissioner, you bring up a couple of points that I didn't mention that Sheriff Lancaster mentioned, was that a person that's on it, they give them a shot before they leave.
Right.
Right.
Then they're out in society without having medication that they have to take, and they've got that 30 days to try to find assistance and get put into a program. The other thing is they're finding is that if they go out with the medication, they are liable to sell it so that they can have funds to function with. And so there's a number of, as I say, ancillary benefits that we don't know about, or we don't know how to take it into effect economically.
Jim, do you know when the deadline is?
I do not. I know that they represented that they would be able to come back to this meeting, but the deadline was going to be just past this meeting, but I do not know when the deadline is.
Well, I'm always open for a Zoom meeting if it's really critical.
But this whole thing really what bothers me, because by being on the committee, you know, that oversees these grants, but there was a lot of time and the emails going more back and forth with questions and all of this. So, as I sit here thinking, well, it's all right, you know, for them to come to a meeting and get mad at us because that we didn't, pass it at the last meeting. Well, but then again, it's on the agenda. We have spent more time, we're talking about this, we're discussing it, we're back and forth. And at the last minute, what they don't have with the decency, you know, to come and say, this is why. And it just irks me that we spent all this time and effort and, you know, had to take with the backlash of the last double meeting because it wasn't passed. You know, and then we did all our homework and then we find out, no, we're not gonna do it,
Okay.
so.
And just one last comment, I would echo what Sue said and just say, we probably should have that answer from the Sheriff's Department.
Right. Right.
Because it's important. They shouldn't unilaterally blow off this issue, particularly when they've lobbied for it.
Right.
And it is a very worthwhile project and would touch a lot of people's lives. Even if it's only 10 people over 3 years is 30 people. And if a majority of those people transition and they're drug-free, that's, you know, that's priceless. So I don't want to let this issue die on the vine tonight. I think the Sheriff's Department should come back to us and explain why. Clearly, I can't support the funding yet because we don't have the explanation. We don't even know when the deadline is, so.
Mhm.
So I'll make my final comment would be, you know, the long-term effects, you know, are being projected out from a 30-day release period. I think probably Commissioner Jameson knows, and maybe everybody else does too. People don't leave the jail after any kind of extended stay without having probation and parole responsibilities. They're gonna be monitored. Someone who's got an addiction issue is gonna be monitored for that. So whether this actually changes outcomes is something that needs to be understood, I think, especially, you know, frankly, the discussion last month and what I read in the New York Times said this treatment is hellaciously expensive. You know, it's pennies for the pills and $100 bills for the injections. So, you know, and like I say, the ease of administration and the avoidance of belligerence in jail community, that, I really don't have a lot of, a lot of motivation to decide anything based on that. That is if that is a problem that exists, it exists because of the administration of the jail, not because of the intrinsic nature of the circumstances, so, in my opinion. And as soon as I've run a jail for a couple of hours, maybe I'd have a different opinion. But that's what I think right now. So, anyway, our choices are to pass it, refuse to pass it, or postpone it indefinitely. If we postpone it indefinitely, it can come back if we ever want it to.
Isn't that the pending motion, or is there a pending motion?
There was a pending motion to pass it, and that motion could be postponed indefinitely, or we could vote on it. And I will, in order to postpone it indefinitely, we'd need a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion to pass it, to postpone it indefinitely.
I'll amend that motion. I'll second that motion. It acts as an amendment, right?
Any discussion on that item? Actually, I think it's a debatable motion anyway. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Oh, my computer just died. Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Could we ask the county public manager to maybe contact the SO or to contact somebody, whether the commissioners might want to know why? Or do we just drop it?
He could probably also tell them there's a pretty good chance it was gonna pass if somebody's shown up to defend
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, let's follow up.
Yeah, could we do a follow-up on that?
Well,
We should.
Yeah, we should do a follow-up on it.
so, speaking of money that we can actually get, 2483 is authorized the manager to accept a grant from Homeland Security on behalf of the county, the amount of
No, I think you need to
$590,000.
go 092.
Right,
That's
the one above it,
technology,
right.
Securitas technology.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was the jail. So let's go 9.2, and it's authorization to enter a contract amendment to include installation of a security system at the jail. And could we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Jim, do you want to tell us anything about this that we care about?
Sure. As the commissioners may remember this year, I believe it was maybe May, June of this year, the commissioners accepted and awarded a bid for the new security system, the new locking system down at the jail. Pretty extensive project that is currently in design. This item is kind of like phase 2 of that bid, in that we would be awarded to the same vendor, Securitas Technologies, and this is solely for the medical edition that is currently under construction. And so we had to RFQ that out separately, and we are bringing forward an awarded bid to Securitas Technologies in the amount of $192,645, coming from the 23-24 general obligation bond.
Did we already move this item?
No,
Excuse me?
No, I don't think
no,
we did.
Okay.
no.
Just trying to make sure.
Any
Keep track.
questions that the commissioners may have on the project scope? Bill is still here, and he's been spearheading this effort.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, when we, back in May, when we said, yeah, we have to have a better security system, we realized how difficult it was all gonna be. But we, of course, we wanna approve it, safety in the jail, makes sense. I'm surprised, just wondering at the time, like, everyone hears about bundling things, bundle your auto, bundle your home. What if we had bundled this on the first go-around? Could we have, was that an option, or, because it seems like a natural progression that this also would have security.
I think there's two answers to that.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
You could give me the one you want to give me, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. Should have bundled, okay.
You could have bundled it,
Yeah,
but we weren't at that point in the actual construction phase and the design of how the medical addition was gonna operate, so that was the true unknown. If we were farther ahead, yeah, that would probably have been included in the original bid.
Gotcha.
But when we went out to the original RFQ, we had made that assumption with all the vendors that had provided a proposal for us, that this is separate. We have to do this separate.
All right.
You know, working with the jail admin there, we want to make sure that they're comfortable with how that's set up, and if they have anything that isn't operating appropriately in the existing medical, what can we do to change that? And we just weren't at that phase where we felt comfortable enough to be able to have them throw a number at it.
Yeah, that makes sense too. You know, it's one thing about trying it out and making sure we get all the kinks
Sure.
before we go to the next level. So
Sure.
I see both sides of the coin. I
Yep.
just had to ask.
Nope, no problem. To be honest with you, I don't want to call it a guinea pig, but the jail medical is going to be our first go at the new system.
Okay.
So for us, this is our takeoff point, because the amount of infrastructure work we have to do in the back end for the existing jail,
Right.
this is all brand new. So we can really work the kinks out in here and have minimal impact on the jail staff of having to operate two systems at the same time. They can kind of work the bugs out in a smaller footprint
Right.
rather than going to the entire jail.
Yeah, reduce the risk.
Yes,
I
very
like it.
much so,
Okay.
very much so, baby steps. Yep.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yep.
That's all I need to know.
Any other questions? Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I have a motion on this item.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And it's unanimous. And then, county manager, the Homeland Security Grant Program, $590,000+.
Yes, this is an annual item that comes before the commissioners anywhere from September to November of a given year. This is our HSGP grant award for FY '24. This is a process where the county and other cities and towns in Cumberland County make application for said funds. Today's world, the applications are reviewed by our EMA folks and then submitted up to MEMA up in Augusta. MEMA ultimately does the award. And the position paper that is in the packet this evening, Michael has spelled out what the 590,000 and change will be going for. And it's spread out throughout the county to the towns, cities, and the county itself, various projects. Michael is still here to answer any questions that the commissioners may have, and I'd ask you for acceptance of these funds.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Questions and comments? Anybody?
I just have one question for Michael, sorry. But you stayed the whole time, it's worth a question, right? Do you see this amount, the $590,553, as something that is, I don't recall the last one, you know, I just can't keep track sometimes what it was prior years. Are you seeing a trend up or down, I guess is my basic question.
Sure, so for a long time, for several years, we'd seen it kind of consistently go up. This is a sizable reduction.
That's what I,
And that's due to a 10% cut in the grant at the federal level.
okay,
That has been passed through essentially, the federal feds divvied up to the state, they cut the amount to Maine by 10%. And MEMA has essentially spending targets for each county, and we've seen their spending target has gone down by 10%, so the savings are getting passed on to us.
Okay.
We as a county still exceeded that spending target by about 40 or 50,000. So
Okay.
we took a hit, but not as big a hit as we were expecting to take.
okay, great, thank you, appreciate that.
Anybody else? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And so, that brings us to the end of our agenda, except comments, asking for comments from the county manager.
Thank you. Want to remind the commissioners that we have moved the November Commissioners meeting 1 week to November 18th. I believe that is a Tuesday, if I remember right. Is it a Monday? Oh, it was the previous week is the holiday week. Okay, yes, it's Monday, November 18th. At that meeting, we are in hopes of presenting the manager's proposed budget to you, and then that will hopefully be remanded off to the Finance Committee, and we'll start the Finance Committee season. Just give you a spoiler alert, the budget is not looking all that hot as we speak right now. There's been some major increases in the fixed costs that are out of our control. We're probably, I think we're 2 departments shy, maybe 3 departments shy of finishing up department review. We're seeing a lot of fixed costs going up, and not a lot of wiggle room to reduce it. So it's gonna be an interesting next 2 or 3 weeks as Teresa, Alex, and I work through this proposed budget to package it up for your review on the 18th. Lastly.
Could I have a question here?
Sure.
Or maybe you don't want to. Can you-
Probably not.
You know my question. Can you give us a window looking at for increase?
I would say that we're somewhere between 6% and 8%, if not a little higher.
Because I think, it's something that the communities have got to know so they can do their planning.
I'll just, some of the fixed costs that we're seeing, workers' comp up $50,000, property and casualty insurance up $50,000, health insurance, I'll know more after tomorrow's meeting possibly, but that will be up about 12%. And then one of our largest increases is that we are very software dependent because of the different types of departments and services that we provide. If you have purchased Adobe Acrobat over the last couple of years, you have found that you don't buy the disc anymore and you get it as free as possible, as long as possible. It's an annual subscription. And more software programs are going with that annual subscription. So we are seeing a significant increase in software out of the IT office in the tune of about $130,000 to $150,000. That is upon many other. We got 4 union contracts being negotiated, and so there's a lot of stresses on this year's budget, and we'll try to work it all out. Lastly, instead of having a department come before us in November, we are going to invite back Jeff Levine of Levine Associates. And he is going to give a final presentation on the Lakes Region Homeless study that has been submitted to us about a week and a half ago. And so we kind of like to regroup with the commissioners on that and just put a bow on that process and start talking about what next steps are. Because the last thing we want to do is have it sit on a shelf. That's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Our friends in the trenches, Amy, anything from HR?
I don't have anything for this evening.
Thank you.
Good.
Teresa, money into things?
I think we've covered that tonight, what we've got in there, and things just continue to be busy. We can't seem to have any slowdown in the finance office right now. I guess that's a good thing, so.
Sounds like it might be a hot topic for a while from here. Alex, you?
Just giving an update, the 2 big construction projects we got going at the jail medical, the walls are going up now. So you'll see, if you were to drive by, you'd see the masonry there. But if you do want to drive by, tell us, because maybe we can arrange it. Probably be a better way to do it. We have fencing up now, but that's coming up out of the ground as we speak, and a lot going on with that project right now. It's just right in the middle of it. And at Northport, the exact opposite, the walls are all coming down, so.
Don't drive by.
We did a tour this morning of what used to be the entryway area that you all got to see, and it's gone. So,
Hooray.
finished, yes, yes. So they're finishing up the demo. They've actually finished up third floor, mostly done with the second floor, and now the first floor, which is most of the demo really, is occurring as we speak.
Catherine, no? Commissioners,
You have a
Commissioners-
major.
Oh, a major, I'm sorry.
He's quiet.
He was right
So we
behind
did
it.
a preliminary budget to present to the county manager and Alex to go over. The border revenue is a pretty steady pace right now with the federal prisoners that we have, which is a positive for our budget purposes. Staffing, it's a challenge. We have some other suggestions when we meet with the manager on trying to improve the onboarding and the follow-up with new employees up to a year to try to improve the retention. It's a tough recruitment phase right now with the workforce. Everybody's looking for staff, but we try to collaborate with a few colleges, try to get some like cadet programs to try to get people in the front door that go in the College of Criminal Justice. And then some other philosophies out there is trying to bring back some maybe retirees on a per diem status to try to fill some of the voids that we have. So that's where we're standing right now, and we're marching forward.
Thank you.
Tim, I got a question on.
Sure.
With all the people that we're hiring, it seems like the door is just a revolving door. Is there anything you can do about the training or the time of professional people spent with the newies so that
I
they
mean,
feel more comfortable instead of just giving up?
I think we do a pretty good job trying to onboard them. I think the follow-up during, we'll say the 6 months to a year could be improved. We've talked about some ideas of trying to improve that. We're losing some people to law enforcement agencies. You know, it's a tough market right now. You know, when it comes to retention, you know, we can do all the pre-screening for people in corrections, but until you get on the job, you really don't know if it's for you. So again, I think the onboarding and the support is a huge part, and we're trying to improve that.
Anything we can do to help?
Not now. I mean, HR has been very supportive. I just think that there's some ideas that when I meet with the manager and Alex that, you know, looking of alternatives to supplement from the workforce.
I have a question. Do you think we are at a crisis mode?
No, I think right now it's stable.
It's stable?
It's stable under the circumstances. You have to remember, our population's gone up about 90 from last year. And as a result, that's more units, that's more responsibilities, it's more staffing challenges. Like I said, I think with us having new employees that do like a hybrid program in-house and keeping them there to at least see the job and feel part of the agency is a lot better than just sending them right to the academy. Because at least they have at least a hands-on experience to improve. I think that when it comes to retention, I think if they go in on the job, you get a better product.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Commissioners, Commissioner Smith,
I've said enough tonight, I think. Thank you.
Commissioner Jameson.
I've never said enough. All kidding aside, as we get into mid to late October, we get into high school sports events, high school playoffs, and so I just encourage all you parents out there to go out and support the teams. This is a very important part of all of the students' lives out there, and it's great to have community support and county support. With the shortening of the days, we also should be conscious about and the changing of the time the next week or two, that kids will be at bus stops both in the morning and at night. It could be dark or getting dark, so let's be conscious about being extra careful and safety out there, because there will be a lot of young people going to and from their homes. And as we turn fall and the weather turns, go out there and enjoy the county. There's lots of great opportunities and events, whether it's apple picking or other events. But it's a wonderful time of year in southern Maine, and especially in Cumberland County. Thank you.
Commissioner Wood Thomas?
No, I don't have anything.
Commissioner Gordon?
Yeah, I have something I'd like to bring to the board's attention. You hear me constantly out indicating about jail standards, professional counsel, and part of our job, well, obviously from the title, is to review the jail standards. The Department of Correction, which is responsible for them, has come out with some changes that they want to initiate and impose upon the county jails. We had the council review them. 4 or 5 of them the commission agreed to. There was 3 that they tabled, and 1 they outright would not support. The council was created by legislation and is only an advisory group to the Department of Corrections. So the Department of Corrections took those, went back, wrote them essentially as they had the original presentation, and now is going to a hearing. One of them, the one that the council outright would not support and voted down, was the one on jail capacity. And what it states is that the jail capacity cannot be exceeded. And in the next statement, it indicates, but the jail cannot refuse to take any prisoner brought to it. And so, without that, with that kind of understanding, now they did put some steps in, which places all the requirements upon the jail to participate, to pay money by either boarding out people or dealing with judiciary to see, and the DA to see if they can't release more people, etc. And one of the steps that we asked the DOC to do was, if we exceeded it, was for them to take into their system those state prisoners that are under their jurisdiction. In other words, there are prisoners in the jail that have been sentenced but haven't been transferred to the prison yet. And in some cases, that goes on for 2, 3, 4 weeks. The other is those that are on probation or parole. It's not unusual for them to stay there for 40 days. That's kind of the way that they are putting an emphasis on the individual, that they're not fooling around. Again, that becomes a requirement of the jail and a cost to us, and not, but is to take those individuals, if a jail exceeds it, and put them back into the system, because it is really their responsibility. The sheriff has no authority over them judicially. So I just want to report that to you, indicating that there is a hearing, and that the council has put together, and it has the MMA, in fact, the individual that's on it has written a response to it. so that they'll have to respond. But we may want to start thinking down the road, if the DOC is gonna continue this way, to have the counties begin to get together and say, no, this is not what's going to happen, and look for a political solution. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple of other matters. Kind of a technical matter, especially given that our budget season now comes upon us. We have a state law that requires that members of our finance committee be elected municipal officials. And that becomes a massive challenge. People from all corners of the county to in addition to other responsibilities as elected officials to try to evaluate our budget. Very difficult, frequently successful process to get people to do that on a consistent basis at least. So it might be an opportunity. They only come up once every 2 years to make plans to ask somebody to introduce a bill that would allow the commission to appoint members of a finance committee through some process that would not include the requirement that they be elected public officials. Give us a better chance to have a full-blown finance committee, and probably we can come up with some kind of rational way to make sure that they're responsive to whatever other forces or pressures or understandings the commission thinks they should bring to such a committee. So, just a reminder, usually the cloture will come up shortly after the elections, and so getting in line early is a good idea. The other thing I'm inclined to mention tonight is feel free to avail yourself of your responsibility or your opportunity to vote. Somebody in some national broadcast that I couldn't avoid overhearing projected that over half of the total votes cast in the national elections this year will be done in a way other than appearing at the polls and casting a ballot there. Which brings me to the idea that at our next meeting, we will know the identities of 2 people who will be joining the commission, and we will be contemplating the next to the last meeting at which 2 extraordinarily distinguished members of our board.
Illustrious.
Illustrious is a synonym, but we'll be serving their last at this point for at least a while. Commissioner Jameson and Commissioner Watonis, and so their accolades will be well deserved, and hopefully they will be in good taste. We've managed to do that in the past every once in a while, and so. We will miss them, but we'll welcome their successors. So,
Thank you, Jim.
that's all I got.
Thank you, Jim.
Good for all of us. So we have on our agenda in executive sessions, 2 of them actually scheduled, 2499 and 24100, and I would